This morning, as we begin, what I'd like to do, though, is I'd like to look at the 3 books that Solomon wrote. He wrote 3 books, even though they're not in the order chronologically of his life. He wrote Song of Solomon, he wrote Proverbs, and he wrote Ecclesiastes. And I want to look at these 3 books. Through the lens of these 3 books, I'd like to reveal just a little bit of Solomon's life. They each represent a part of his life. The first book, obviously, that we have here is Song of Solomon. And what this book represents to us is Solomon's young years. He's a young monarch, a young king, and he is in first love. He's a young man who's grown up with all these privileges, yet he has fallen in love with the Shulamite girl. Now, there have been those, for you who love Old Testament intricacies, there have been those who have said that this girl, the Shulamite, is possibly Abishag the Shunammite, who in 1 Kings chapters 1 and 2, when David was old and Solomon was about to be exalted to the throne, David got so cold in his bed, his circulation was bad, that they brought a young virgin, Abishag the Shunammite, and she lay with him, and it says he did not know her sexually. She was there, and apparently Solomon may have fallen in love with her because later when his brother Adonijah tries to usurp his rise to the throne, he asks for the hand of Abishag the Shunammite in marriage, and Solomon says, well, he should have just asked for the kingdom, and he whacks him right there dead. His love for this Abishag apparently caused him to do in his treacherous brother. Now, whether the Shulamite girl from this story and the Shunammite Abishag, Shunammite synonymous, a town 60 miles north of Israel, whether that's the case or not, it is highly possible that this story is indeed Solomon and the Shulamite pinning together their early romance. The Shulamite, some of the language in the Hebrew is very feminine, too feminine for a male to probably have written. So together they would have written these parts. And it's hard sometimes to understand, is it the man speaking or the woman speaking? But they wrote this together. And what some have proposed is that possibly as a young prince or early as the king, Solomon goes out with the party to inspect his flocks. He would have had flocks in Shunem, and there he would have met this young shepherdess. And early on in the story, they meet, and there's a spark, and they kiss, and then he goes away, and she's dreaming, she's longing to get to see him. And yet, when we see them interact again, it's she being summoned to the throne room, to the palace of the king. And so Solomon might have been first revealed to her as a shepherd, but then as they would do in those days, when you were betrothed to one another, the man, the groom, would surprise the bride. They didn't know when the wedding was going to be, and here Solomon surprises her not just with a wedding, but now he's not only a shepherd, he's also a king. And she knows him much more intimately. Whatever the case may be, the reality is that this particular book, Song of Solomon, it is meant to convey the pure, untainted love that Solomon had in his life at this age for the Lord and for his lady. Interestingly enough, in Solomon's life, his love for women is in some ways synonymous with his love for God. How he deals with ladies reveals a lot about how he's doing with the Lord. And so here he is, young. He's been asked by the Lord, what do you want and I'll give it to you? And wisely, passionately, beautifully, he asked for wisdom. I want to know how to go out and come in front of these people. And God says, because you asked for wisdom, I'm going to give you all the stuff that young men would normally have asked for. Riches and fame. But Solomon, he's in love with God. He's intent on building a temple for the Lord. And so his love for God and his love for this young, tanned by the sun, sexy Shulamite girl, they're synonymous with one another. First love. That's the Song of Solomon, as we're going to see.